What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hapticast, episode number 94. My name is Josh Toll, and I am joined by my good friend, Brett Roberts, as always. And Brett, today, we have a very special guest on the show. We've been talking about it for a couple weeks, but I want everybody to give a nice, big digital round of applause to Josh Ruben. Welcome, Josh Ruben, to Hapticast.
Thank you for having me. Holy mackerel. I feel like I should have busted out my old Fallout and played that. So it's like the last video game I played. We're gonna have a real good time nerding out. That's not true, but close enough.
No, that's awesome. Well, that's a good series to play. So just to give everybody a quick rundown, it's going to be a little bit of a different show this week. Obviously, we're going to be talking about what we're watching and playing and doing, obviously, like we normally do. But then most of the day today, we're just going to be talking about, some upcoming projects from Josh Ruben, about Josh Ruben himself and his career, and why we love horror and everything like that. There is going to be a little video game talk in there, though, we promise. We do promise, because some of Josh's projects do relate to video games. But right. So how we're going to start is just to give Josh an example. I mean, everybody else knows. I'm going to go through my media consumption update. Then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Josh Ruben, and then Brett's going to round it out as we kind of hop into the show. So what I'm playing and doing and watching, spoiler alert, is a lot of things related to our guest today. We've been familiar with your work for a little while, Josh, but we obviously wanted to do our homework and get caught up on some new projects that you have coming out, mainly being Blood Relatives and Wounded Fawn, which we'll talk about today, obviously.
Yes.
So real quick, let me get out of the way. TV and anime, still watching Chainsaw Man, which I don't know if you're an anime fan or not, Josh. But
I've actually seen screenshots from that, and I'm like, I have to watch that. He has the chainsaw for a head and for like each of his arms, right?
That's right.
Correct. Yeah. So that's a lot of fun. Getting back into watching Battlestar Galactica, which is just always an excellent watch. Games, I don't have much else to input this week other than I'm playing Midnight Suns still and Slay the Spire again. And then movies. Nice. Are you ready? I'm going to quickly rattle these off. Tond, which is a short film. Pear, which is another short film. Scare Me, which is not a short film. It is an awesome, awesome movie, which we'll talk about. Blood Relatives, A Wounded Fawn, and then the famous, and I can't believe I never saw it before, Darkman, which blew me away.
So, dude, that's right. Yes, there was a game too, I believe, for Nintendo or Super Nintendo.
No shit, really?
Yeah, it was probably as challenging as the original Batman '89, which I remember I couldn't get, 4 feet into, like Contra. Man, I'd be very curious. Maybe I could like find that on my Switch or something. I wonder if like there's some depths you can find.
Wow. It is a 1991 video game, Nintendo game, published by Ocean Software, and it actually has really, really good reviews.
No shit.
Yeah. Whoa.
And I see some original copies on eBay. And they're pretty cheap, only like $30-$40. So
what's it for the original Nintendo?
The original NES looks like. Yep.
Nice.
Wow.
So, well, cool. Josh is already teaching us something that we didn't know.
There you go. Yeah. So that is an honor coming on here and having you guys go, wait a minute, really? And I'm like, yeah.
That's awesome.
I do know a thing or two.
So
very cool.
Josh, then what are you and for audio listeners, this is really going to probably throw a lot of people off, but that's okay with having 2 Joshes on the show. But Josh Ruben, what are you playing, watching, doing? TV, anime, games, movies? What do you got going on? Anything that's interesting and exciting to you that you've been consuming lately?
Well, what I played most recently was Cuphead and Friday the 13th. On my Switch, and I think Rico is the name of the shooter, a really, really tough one. But I was such a like Virtua Cop, like Sega Saturn boy. I maybe played that way too many times. That was like what I used to be obsessed with. Then graduated to with Xbox. Was it like? That was the when I got crazy into Fallout, and then my wife got me a Switch. I want to say Christmas of last year, if not the year previous. And that was when I was like, oh, not only can you play the old stuff, you can revisit like F-Zero, but there's also this killer stuff you can kind of enjoy. It's tough to get back into it when you haven't been like, I don't know, cognitively your skill level has not been sharpened along the way. I took a long break from games after playing quite a bit. So Cuphead, Friday the 13th. Gosh, we've been watching White Lotus. Very, very different than Friday the 13th and Cuphead. And what was the third thing?
Oh, just if you had any like anime too, but that's, you know.
Yeah, anime, movies.
Well, we've been dying to watch, I think it's called Perfect Blue.
Oh, Satoshi.
That's a phenomenal film. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then that one has to remain at the top of the list. We haven't been able to get to that one just yet, but I'm dying to. I've just been hearing really good things.
We got to see that in a theater in Philly a couple of years ago at this point, and what an awesome experience that was to see it in the movie. Yeah, it was great. Super cool. And I imagine for you, I imagine you travel a lot for your filming and whatnot, and the Switch is probably like the best console ever for you right now.
Dude, it would be, except like, COVID was our big kind of my big industry break, so I edited Werewolves Within, kind of being down for the year, played a bit during the heft of the pandemic. And then when I've been traveling, I'll forget that I have this travel companion here, like the few times that I do fly a year, because I haven't gone into pre-production on another movie yet. But when I do, I feel like, typically how I like to spend my travel time is just rereading the script and going all over that stuff and not taking my mind off of the movie. I just like to reread and reread and prep. But I wish I had a just vocational flight, just like a straight vacation travel coming up, so that I can just be like, oh yeah, you don't just have to find Delta's movies or whatever, or listen to some obscure radio station. Yes, it would be when I remember it. So I'm gonna try and charge it. I remember it for the next time I'm out.
Very cool. All right, I'm gonna hop in then. I'm gonna talk about what I'm watching, playing, and consuming. So, Chainsaw Man, as Josh Toll said, I've been loving it. I'm on episode 7 now, and it's fantastic. As Josh Ruben said, I mean, the main character has a giant chainsaw for a head, 2 chainsaws for arms. It doesn't get any more metal than that. It's just super badass. So super fun with that. And then I've also been playing some games. So Marvel's Midnight Suns, another one that Josh mentioned. Been playing a little bit of Pokemon Scarlet on the Nintendo Switch. And then I've been playing Rayman Legends, which is a game by your friends over at Ubisoft, Mr. Ruben. Very, very challenging game. I've been playing that one for a long time, trying to get this platinum trophy in that. So that's been fun. And then top it all off, some movies. So again, man, a Ruben-filled movie list here. I rewatched Werewolves Within. I watched Blood Relatives. I watched Darkman, which obviously you didn't make, but is tied to you in some way or another. It's a masterpiece, and we're going to talk about that later on. But finally, I also watched A Wounded Fawn. And I want to say congratulations, because I just saw on your Twitter earlier today, it was listed on Rotten Tomatoes best horror movies of 2022 ranked.
Number 5.
Which
is crazy. And that's just now. In the next few weeks, there'll be something else that'll qualify and change Rotten Tomatoes' rankings. But yeah, Travis is a heavy hitter. I mean, each of his projects have been a hit in their own right. I think Girl on the Third Floor was for a moment the most watched movie on Netflix or something insane.
Wow.
And Jacob's Wife won Fangoria Chainsaw Awards and was certified fresh right away. He just knows how to make them,
For sure. This was definitely my favorite of all of the films that he's made so far. I've seen all those 3 projects that you just mentioned. This one just, for me, took it to another level. And I'm a huge fan of pro wrestling, and CM Punk. Phil Brooks is the main character in Girl on the Third Floor. And I love that movie. But yeah, I mean, Wounded Fawn took it to another level. And it was funny because I watched it first, and then Josh watched it was it right after me or concurrently before
I pretty much started watching it as you were about to finish it. So
right. So I'm texting him. I'm like, dude, this is nuts. I couldn't believe my eyes with some of the stuff that was going on. So yeah, crazy film. I guess we can kind of dive into that and just kind of ask some questions relating to A Wounded Fawn. So first of all, your signature weapon in this film. What's the origin behind that? Like, where did that come from? And also, I want to ask, did you get to keep it after the film was done?
Well, if I did get to keep it, I would not have made it very far on the plane, because the real one, we had two of them. The replica of which was, used for obviously all the physical contact, including when I was, no spoilers, using it on a certain person,
right.
multiple people. So Travis set out to find an obscure weapon that was unlike anything we'd seen in the slasher verse before. And this character, Bruce, that I play, this total narcissist, would be one to want to kill with an exotic thing. As Travis put it the other day, he's like, I'm not like that Michael Myers type. I'm not like Freddy with his glove. I use a bog knock, because it's an assassin's tool that originated in India, that makes murders look like tiger attacks. And that's what the thing actually is. So he basically looked up like obscure murder weapon and found this on the internet. It's called a bog knock, and we had two of them. The real thing is heavy, and really, really kind of scary to put in your hand, because you're like, you could fuck someone up with this thing. But it made it, I don't know, it's just it was kind of an incredible compliment to this insane character and this insane script that he'd written. I'm glad you called that one out. I can't remember if you had a follow-up question to that. I'm short-term memory today, but that thing was rad.
It's all good. And another thing that I noticed as I was watching it was just the vibes in general were something else. And I was talking to Josh and I said, this reminds me of a giallo, like an old Italian giallo film.
Yeah. Which,
well
speaking
put,
of, I'm
really
wearing a Suspiria shirt today.
Yeah. So Travis set out as an homage. Absolutely.
Okay, that's actually cool to hear, because that is, Brett has watched a lot of them, but I have watched, it is like my favorite subgenre of horror movies. And Dario Argento specifically, and Mario Bava, and all those kind of heavy hitters are some of my favorite directors of all times. And I think right up from the very beginning of that movie, the colors, the doors, the vibes, the atmosphere, how it's set up. Yeah, it could be, I've seen a lot of people talk about it as like a traditional slasher in the beginning, and then we go other places. But to me, immediately I was like, oh, this is a giallo movie, is what it feels like. So it's cool to hear that as it basically being kind of intentional, right? Like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. He knew that he wanted the blood to have that red orange kind of a tint to it. He knew he wanted to shoot it on 16 mil, which Joe Bagos had done in a movie called Bliss, and he was just sort of asking him to demystify that process. And then, you go to a composer even like Val, who's this total genius Swede of a man, and he knew exactly kind of imbue that sort of goblin-esque sort of female vocal interlaid kind of composition. And then what you end up having is just it's this wholly visionary idea. I mean, the movie is Patrick Bateman at the Evil Dead cabin at its most boiled down. But then so it's a film for, say, the metal of us horror fans, but it's also a film that you can unpack as like an artist or someone who understands Greek mythology, which I think is why it's hitting on so many levels. And I'm curious too, from your guys' perspective, is just I'm amazed when anything gets out there and sort of quote unquote hits on a level the way that, say, even Terrifier 2 is right now, in a different sort of way. I wonder if it's that it's just fresh and it's not entirely derivative, like it's got a fresh set sort of actually the movie fresh style setup, and then psycho killer's taking a girl to a cabin, but then it goes off the rails. Is it that we all want to see something different, right? Is that kind of why we're all stoked on the Chainsaw Man of it all, and the Art the Clown, and the Wounded Fawn, and even Nope, which Nope was not my number one movie, but like the imagery, the Akira shout out, I mean, all that kind of that brilliance inlaid. That's what we're kind of excited about. The Barbarian, right? I mean, it's just like you guys as consumers, that's what you're stoked to consume. Yeah.
Yeah, you
absolutely.
are listing I mean, things that hit for us, recently, all of those things. And I think, Brett and I are huge. Horror is our favorite genre, not just in video games, movies, TV. Like that's our bread and butter. That's what we love. And I think the great thing about movies like Wounded Fawn and a lot of the other ones that you mentioned is that there is something familiar to them. There's like a touchstone that you can go back to. Like to me, like I immediately was like, oh, Gallo, good. I can roll up with a blanket and this is comfort food to me. But then on the flip side of that, it's like I also love movies and I study film and I work in theater and stuff like that. So seeing the more deep parts of those things that don't come off as pretentious but actually thought-provoking gives you the touchstone to, things that you love, but also challenges you as a consumer. But I think also somebody that doesn't care about either of those things can also watch it and enjoy it. And those three pillars are what I think makes things like Wounded Fawn really hit and take off.
Yeah, you really have to. I'm learning that you have to make a splash. You have to, your movie has to be noisy, and you're touching on all of the things I think that qualify. The movies that broke through, even Hellbender, which I haven't seen. Everybody's dying, over Hellbender. They have these splashy plots and sequences where you can go like, oh, you got to see this because of this. As someone who came from like the viral video world, like coming up through making videos for College Humor, that's how I got my start. It's like, that's very familiar to me now. You have to break through, especially now that any of us can make a movie on our phone or what have you. It's an interesting thing to kind of talk about with people.
And we just came off of the whole like reboot era where I feel like every movie was getting a reboot. So like is getting that breath of fresh air for especially a horror film, because so many horror films have been remade over the years. It's just like, mwah, like it's time,
Truly, it's rad to see, especially on the Rotten Tomatoes list, how many of them are original. I was going back and going, wait a minute, let me just take a look here. It's like even like Ty West's movies, just Pearl and X alone, the fact that they were out and they were back to back, and he smartly, or A24 smartly was like, yeah, fuck it, go for it. Like spend another $1 million on just using these sets. Just I don't know, it gives me hope for what 2023 and beyond is going to be. And also the fact that Universal just like really doubled down on some gonzo shit. Megan being one of them, which I'm sure is going to be bonkers in its own way from Blumhouse, but like Violent Night and Nope. I mean, I don't know.
Cocaine Bear.
I've got high hopes. Cocaine Bear. Absolutely. Like that's absolutely genius. And that movie's going to be packed.
Oh,
and people are going to go back for that,
Yeah.
Cool.
100%.
So something that you touched on, and I know Brett and I are really dying to ask you about one moment in particular in Wounded Fawn, and we can of course talk about your other movies as well. We don't have to spend the whole time Wounded Fawn, but we love it. You touched on something that people remember moments, and I do think it's one thing to have a complete package for something, and it's another thing to be able to market that and be like, oh, you have to see this scene or this moment or whatever it is, like you talked about, or this kill. Think about like Terrifier 2, like the bedroom scene in that, with like there's some fucked up shit going on out there, but people remember it and it's awesome. Wounded Fawn, this is going to be a spoiler, and I don't know if you want to go into them or not, but the last moment of the movie with you performing a scene in one take, that's a really long time. I'll let you dictate how far into we go, but at the very end of the movie is really long, and I mean that just in the sequence itself, and it's really messed up, and it really is seared into, I think, our brains. So would you want to touch on that a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I by the time we shot that sequence, it was the end of shooting. It was the last 48 hours of shooting. And in your second to last day, when as Travis uses the analogy of the band all knows what they're capable of, what they're down to do, what their strengths are and all. He knew that he could ask both Sarah and I to stay in it for this 11-minute take. We spent an 11-minute film cartridge. That's how long a cartridge lasts, as I've learned. So there's 5 other minutes on the cutting room floor, believe it or not, of this very scene. He just was like, I know you guys can do it. Let's just go for it. Just give it a try. And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. So when people see that and they ask me, oh my gosh, weren't you cold and weren't you wet and weren't the rocks tough on your legs? And, what about you're wearing this prosthetic eyepiece? And yeah, I mean, there was discomfort, but that was so eclipsed by the excitement and the buzz of just like being in the theater of it all. Like I come from theater too. And it's, it's like, oh yeah, we're just, you got to be on for this. There's no fucking up. Or if you do fuck up, it's just we got to embrace the hopefully gift flaw of it all. And that it will read just as organic. We were all just down to do it and stoked to do it. And I'm just thrilled that he asked. And look what happens. It's like in the moment he says, hey, why don't we just try this thing? Because we're running out of time and the sun's coming up. I think this might, I got to follow my gut on this. And now it ends up being the thing where people are going, well, I'm not super stoked even on the trailer, but maybe I'll just check it out just to see, what the ending's all about. I'll just sit through it. And then you see what you like along the way. You realize you fall for the feminist revenge story or the performances or the imagery or the shallow homage of it all. So I don't know, it's definitely getting my gears turning as a filmmaker, like with the things that are kind of on my table or floating around right now that I'm sort of wondering is going to hit first. When I get into prep on the next thing, I'm definitely going to be keeping in mind, like, what's the thing that's going to make consumers like you want to go to the theater? Like, I want those Cocaine Bear people. I want it to be something that I'd want to rewatch. You have to keep your eye on that and know that you're going into something with producers, with partners that want that same shit.
Well said. Very well said. You mentioned very briefly there, like the prosthetic that you had on your eye. Yeah. What was the process like for that? Because when it was kind of not early on, but like you had that on for like a really long time in the movie, like a big chunk of that movie is just you wearing this prosthetic on your eye. What was that process like? How long did it take to put the makeup on? Was it hard to keep it on? Did it try falling off?
It once that thing was on, it was affixed pretty tightly. Like our makeup artist, Ashley Thomas, the sculptor is actually Dan Martin, who did, I believe, prosthetics on Possessor. He works with Brandon Cronenberg, which is why the thing just looked so fucking rad. It was almost sort of paper thin. And when Ashley applied it, what it does is kind of gets you into character. I mean, you lose a bit of your vision to a degree, or when you look in the mirror, you're like, oh my God, your brain is saying you have an injury, something isn't right. So you have this kind of wooziness. It helps with the head wound. It helps with the motivation, getting in the character of it all. But once that thing was on, it was stuck on. It's uncomfortable in the beginning of the day because it's, being shellacked on with cold spirit gum. And then at the end of the day, it's got to get taken off with, stinky ass remover. I feel like at some point I started to get a little irritation, like on my cheekbone. I'm used to it. I've worn prosthetics for a lot of my career, and the makeup would take, I'd say, a minimum of 45 minutes, but that was probably the amount. Yeah, it really wasn't. I throw on my my Ash like get up, and then get the prosthetic on, a little bit of blood in the hair from Kai Stamps, our hairstylist, and I was ready to roll.
Very awesome.
Cool. So let's shift gears maybe a little bit and talk about something that is completely opposite tonally, project that you are involved in, not just as an actor, but as a producer, that is out and about and also getting its fair share of praise, which it deserves as well. Because I think we both also quite liked the movie. And that is Blood Relatives. So this movie is completely tonally different. I personally found it super endearing and really lighthearted, and a really nice, just like we talked about with Wounded Fawn, there's like a nice touchstone to like not just a coming of age or a father-daughter story or vampires or whatever, but it flips it on its head, and there's something really endearing about these characters and just watching them together and exist together that I found really awesome. So maybe if you just want to comment about your part in the movie, or really whatever you want to talk about with it, that's just kind of to get us started down with that.
Well, yeah. So Noah Segan, who wrote, directed, and produced, he was actually a test audience member for Werewolves Within for my second film. And there's this, because it was during the pandemic that we were doing tests. It was over Zoom, and there's this function on Zoom when you can essentially spy on a panel. And so I was like an unknown guest viewing the panelists talk about the film and taking notes and how can we make it better and blah blah. And I was like, holy shit, that dude is in Looper. I fucking love Looper. He was great as Kid Blue. That was how I recognized Noah. And then you look and he's done 40 movies. We got on the phone and we're just kind of shooting the shit, and I was being very thankful for his involvement and just kind of picking his brain about working with Ryan Johnson and all this stuff. And he had ended up had seen Scare Me, my first film, and he was like, I've got an intimate kind of character driven genre movie, not too dissimilar in scale. Would you be interested in reading it? I read it. I really dug it. He said, would you be interested in producing it? I said, I'm not a paperwork producer by any means, but I'm a connector. I know actors. I'm happy to help direct you when you're on screen. I didn't really have that for me, you know, when I did my first film, sort of self-directing. And he was like, yeah, let's go for it. So I came aboard as a producer, and he sort of knew right away that I was kind of, you know, wild and weird enough to do this Renfield-esque character. And that's how Roger came to be. But yeah, you're right. It's a completely different film tonally, and I like that. I think that's why it made the splash that it did, and I think it's going to have a long life because it technically is a gateway horror. It's something at least that parents could watch with their teenagers, or that young girls might canonize down the road. And it's just, but what's I think the most exciting thing, just to finish the point, is that people have been especially vocal about a TV series. They're like, wow, I'd watch 5 seasons of this. And I'm like, shit, you know, maybe that's the move. So we're sort of talking about that. Talking to Noah about, I don't know, just at least lighting the fire under him to, you know, come up with an angle that he's excited about. And then we can see how that nets out.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was actually one of the questions and one of the points that we were going to bring up to you, was that we loved this movie. We wanted more. And like, we felt like as the shenanigans of father and daughter were you know, just getting started, the film ended. And we were like, dude, this would have made such a great show. It was like a pilot episode, really. And you know, we would really dig, you know, a full TV show of this. What We Do in the Shadows is a huge hit right now, another vampire horror comedy type of thing. So, you know, people are into that stuff. So yeah,
they really are. And I think subverting movie monsters as well, putting them in a completely different scenario or environment, or let's take it away from the brutal kind of, you know, Amblin-esque scope and put it in a different kind of real world scenario. I think that might even be why, like, Bones and All, even though that isn't a movie monster movie, more grounded, more kind of artful horror. There's something interesting. I think it all boils down to fresh angle shit, and why I think we're all so eager to devour something different has sort of paid off to that degree, that people are going, oh, thank God, these guys can't compete with 30 Days a Night anyway, or Let the Right One In, so they're going the other way. And that's what I dig about it. And yeah, I'm super proud of that one as a producer. I think it's going to have a nice leg.
Yeah, and your character is just one of the best parts of the whole film, to be honest with you. You played, was it Roger was his name?
Yeah, Roger Fieldner, so a total Renfield rip. Yeah,
right. Big Raj, as he's referred to.
He's not that big.
Not that big. But yeah, man, that was a great film. Another film of yours that I love is one that I think I'm going to dub like your Tommy Wiseau movie. And it's because you were the writer, you were the actor, you were the director, and you were the producer. Scare Me.
Yes, sir.
What was it like making that movie? Because to me, that's such like it's an intimate movie. It takes place in mainly one location inside that cabin. Right. What was it like filming that?
For me, it was a total dream. I think for the crew, it was really tough because, and that's a testament to how great of a producer and a team that I had, is that me, even as the boss, even as a producer, I still had to act and be there as a partner for my actors. The team was very small. It was a skeleton crew. It was in a very cold, time of year in upstate New York. We'd had 2 or 3 nasty blizzards, even nastier than I could recall as someone who grew up in the Hudson Valley, in that area. But it was a dream come true, because it's like, you know, I'm making a movie in the town I grew up in with an actress who's been on several seasons of TV, who is just like down to fuck around, and also with a Saturday Night Live cast member at the time, Chris Redd, who's a total genius, and Becky Drysdale, who's one of the funniest people I know. My producers were my homies at Irony Point, Dan Powell and Alex Bach, Andrew Rhodes. It was such a killer operation, but very kind of Fitzcarraldo at the beginning. You know, it's like the production van slid on the ice into a trench. We were delayed unloading into the house. I only had my lead actor for 9 days of the 12 days we shot. And it was a tight movie. But it was a total dream. Like, all I wanted to do was cross the bucket list thing, off said list of making a movie, let alone like then getting acquired by Shudder, let alone then getting a Sundance. It was like, holy shit, I didn't think we'd check all these other extra boxes. This is just cream. That was killer. Of course, you could noodle on everything. I wish I could go back and cut, like, it was my first movie, so you see all the little things you'd want to fix. I wish I could cut some minutes out of the film and change this, that, the other thing. But it's, my first kid. It's my baby, my first baby. So I'll love it forever, and I'm so glad I did it, and it made my career.
Yeah. I think because Brett had seen Scare Me a long time ago. I just saw it for the first time more recently. And what stood out to me about it, I mean, it is very intimate, like Brett said. It's primarily one location, but it's so actor driven. And a lot of it is, well, the whole runtime pretty much just you all telling stories with each other. And yeah, there's like a meta narrative going on and stuff like that, but it's really about these stories that you're telling to each other. And one of the things that really stood out to me is that it's all accomplished not just through your guys' acting ability, which is excellent, but sound effects and the way that you set up the shots and how you pace things, that it's really not very there's no fluff to the presentation of it. It's all kind of raw talent and a lot of this mixing with the sound behind the scenes. That's what really stood out to me about it.
It's a sound designer's movie and a composer's movie. And that was part of how I sold through, me not being a movie star, and Aya being a TV star, and Chris, of course, coming aboard. It's how I sold through the thing and got any number of dollars to make it. Was, I've never seen that before. An anthology film that doesn't leave the campfire, and that's really all we could afford to do was, a propless anthology film. And I think between that and the social commentary of it all, and yes, giving especially an actress like Aya the opportunity to do some shit you'd never seen her before, or that she'd never had the opportunity to do before, that just became the confluence, that perfect storm that made the thing possible.
Yeah, and we're big fans of Aya. Obviously, she's huge on The Boys, Amazon's The Boys. She plays a complete asshole Stormfront in that show. From everything I've heard about her, literally the complete opposite of who she is in real life, like complete opposite of who she really is. So can you just talk to, Aya, and how good of an actress or actor you have to be to play such a piece of shit,
Well, she's a fucking genius. And what I love about Aya is she's she came from theater, so she's extremely collaborative, and she's also a risk taker. And she's one to say, absolutely, I'll crawl on the floor, or I'll do this dog growl, or I'll do this Russian accent, or I'll do this, that, and the other thing. She wanted to do the whole character of Fanny in a Russian accent. I was like, you got to be a clean, you have to be a clean canvas for the rest of the movie. You're going to be playing a lot of different things, so be happy to default in your own voice. I mean, she's wonderful. She's a dream collaborator. I couldn't have asked for a better partner in that endeavor. What I like to do is go through any project. I did this with Werewolves too, and ask my actors, how do you like to be talked to? How do you like to be directed? Just to kind of get a sense of where they're at psychologically, how they like to work. And she said, the only thing I don't do are 3 in a rows. There are some actors like I can do it because I'm a sociopath. They like say, like, just take that line again. Just give me 3 in a row any way you want to do it. It's like, well, I just met the baker. I just met the baker, and whatever. And you're standing there and you're kind of doing it on your own time. But she, as a theater actor and as a feeler, her just technique wise, she wants to be led into the dialogue. So that was the one thing you kind of archive. But I mean, that was it. Otherwise, she was like so easy peasy. None of us could really believe, as small timers, essentially, that she was in this small living room doing all the things she was doing with full commitment. She's a dream. And she just texted me the other day. She's like, remember we made a movie together? And I was like, yes. And she's like, I hope we get to do it again. I would love to find that role. that brings us back together.
That's fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, and she hadn't gotten the boys yet. When we finished that movie, by the time press rolled around, she had just become this superhero on a big Amazon show, and we're like, this is going to help us. Thank fucking God. How cool is that? That timing was just rad.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. One more thing I want to mention about Scare Me is I went into it and I read the description of it, and like Josh said, I watched it a couple of months ago or maybe even a year ago at this point. And I went into it and I read the description and I was like, oh, this is an anthology movie. I'm a huge fan of horror anthologies. I was expecting like VHS or ABCs of Death. You know what I mean? And I go into it and it completely subverted my expectations. And it was almost more so like there's this film, 2008 Pontypool. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No.
So Pontypool is this zombie virus outbreak film that takes place all inside of a radio station. And it's very tell but don't show. So the main character is the host of a radio show, and he's kind of doing this radio show throughout a zombie virus. And he's like, let's go cut to our field correspondent. And it's, you know, you hear it, but you can't see it. And I got that vibe from Scare Me when you guys are, you know, acting out the stories that you're telling. You're not actually showing us per se everything that's going on, but we're kind of, you know, visualizing it in our head, seeing you guys act it out. So
yeah,
total cool vibes from that, and I definitely recommend it. If you haven't seen Pontypool, check that out.
It's on my Letterboxd watch list as we speak.
There you go.
There you go.
That's rad. Love that.
Yeah, man.
Speaking of Letterboxd, and we'll hop around a little bit here. I know we still want to touch on a couple other things too, but I just have to mention it, and we don't have to talk about it that long. But one of my favorite projects by you is a short film I actually found on your website called Freddie Daryl. Which I forget what the dates and everything were, but I think it is like it's a great showcase, not just for you like as an actor, but I mean just for somebody to watch one person just and eventually another person just do a character, like a great character, constantly and really, really truthfully. So I enjoyed that movie quite a bit, and there's a weird little twist at the end, and I would love to talk about that, but we use Letterboxd all the time. Most people that love movies do. You're on Letterboxd. We know that. We follow you on Letterboxd. We log every movie we watch on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
So I watched Freddie Daryl. I went to go log it on Letterboxd, and I was like, it's not on Letterboxd. Why is it not on Letterboxd? I know it's a short film, but Letterboxd is full of short films. Why isn't it logged on Letterboxd?
Yeah.
So what I did, I figured out how to, because it's almost like a digital shelf, and I feel strongly about making sure everything I watch is logged. I found out how to create a movie database account and add things to the back end of Letterboxd and get it listed. So Freddie Daryl is now listed on Letterboxd, and I logged it because I watched it. So
wait, are you Josh Tull?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Oh my God, I just looked. You logged it. Oh my God, that's so fun. Oh geez, that is so great. Oh my God, bless you.
So for some reason, Letterboxd like crops the poster really strangely, but at least it's on there because I was a little triggered when I found out that I wasn't on there, because it's like a completionist thing for us, I think, is just making sure that through line is there for everything that we watch. So that's listed on Letterboxd, and I just wanted to mention that because it was.
Oh my God, that is so cool of you. I'm looking at it and I'm like, holy shit, look at that. I can't believe that we're taking out all the crew members and everything.
Yeah.
Oh man, that made my day.
Oh,
very
good.
Cool.
Happy to do it. It was selfish, but I'm also happy to do it.
I mean, it pays off in droves for all of us, because now the world will understand. Yeah, you know, the funny story about Freddie Daryl, I had like some Christmas money from, it was 2017, and I don't know if it was a grandparent or someone that sent me a check. It was a few $100s in cash. And I was like, I'm going to use that rather than like spending it on toys. Maybe I'll use this to see who's around upstate. If I can get a sound person, a makeup person, and a shooter to just like come out, make a couple $100 and be in and out in like 4 hours. We shot Freddie Daryl in like 4 hours, you know, and we were freezing.
Right.
I gave them all cash. We used my parents' house as home base. We shot the thing, and I don't think I even submitted it to any film festivals. I think so. I was like, this isn't going to get anywhere. But Josh, like Reggie Watts and Sarah Silverman and Michael Cera's brief internet venture, licensed it, which I thought was just so fun that just like you go out and you make a thing just for you and you put it out into the world. And it's like, oh no shit, even someone just wants to give me a little money to put it out on their platform, or it was just a I'm just so glad I followed my gut that day, because I truly was debating whether I was gonna like make it or not make it. And I'm glad I did. People are still talking about it many a year later. If you're listening and you're thinking about making the thing, like make the thing. It's so good. You just never know how it's gonna pay off. And I'll kind of briefly hint that rediscovering Freddy, I want to revisit that character in a found footage format, maybe a horror found footage format.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think that might be super fun. Yeah.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome, because the end, and we don't have to talk about it if you're going to incorporate it larger, but like the end, there's just a little touchstone to something a little off right at the end. And that, like, it's like you're watching, I don't know if it was the intent or not, but I feel like it probably was, but it's like you're watching like a mockumentary style thing almost, is what it felt like. And then right at the end, there's something just a little weird and off, and then it's over. And that type of thing is a great little hook, especially if you were to expand that project, because I think one of the scariest things is when things seem totally normal and then there's something just slightly off, and then it puts a pit in your stomach, and that's usually the most engaging type of horror.
I agree. I mean, God bless Joseph Winter and Vanessa Winter, who made Deadstream. To rope you in. So it's not super congruent of a film, but to rope you in with that humor and familiarity and humor, and then just to like whip your ass with those creature effects. Like that is the definition of horror comedy, and through the vehicle of found footage. Like how inspiring.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
All right. Well, we said we were going to talk about video games a little bit more, and I think now's the time. So, Mr. Ruben, I have a huge question for you. You have created here, you have directed one of the best rating video game movies of all time, with Werewolves Within. And I know there's not many good video game movies out there, but God damn it, you made a great one. But my question is, how did Werewolves Within get tied to Ubisoft? How did that happen? How did it, become part of this video game property for this VR party game? Like, how did that happen?
I had never heard of the video game before, which terrified me to a degree, because I had this project come to me to basically pitch on. I was like, a video game movie, you know how those go.
Yep.
But it was part of Ubisoft's Women's Film and Television Fellowship Program, and Mishna Wolf, the writer of Werewolves Within, basically chose that property, this obscure video game, and saw an opportunity to make a thing like Whodunit, a Clue like Whodunit. And that's why I was like, holy shit, I have to pitch on this. It's so great. I didn't know the video game existed. When I got the gig, Ubisoft asked me to come in and play the video game. There weren't even enough people online to play the video game with me. I had to play with the video game creators. I want to say at Red Storm Entertainment, maybe. And they were so sweet. And I was terrible at it. And I may have fooled them on like round 3 or so, but I got the sense of it.
Nice.
But I think that's why they gave us so much freedom, is because it was kind of an obscure Ubisoft game to begin with, and part of their program was, let's just give writers carte blanche to take the nugget of the concept of these obscure video games and create IP. And that's how it came to me. And when I got the gig, I asked Ubisoft, my producers, I said, what do I owe you guys? What are the Easter eggs I owe you? If I'm watching a video game movie or anything based on anything, I want Easter eggs. And they're like, you don't owe us anything. You don't have to put any Easter eggs in it. You just owe us a good movie. And I was like, well, I don't want that. I do want to make a good movie, but I do want to put an Easter egg. So there are some Werewolves Within kind of nods, like I'm staring at right now. I have the book, the key, the directory, your book of weaponry, arsenals, a bag of tricks, was the ledger at the Beaverfield Inn, sitting on Janine's
oh wow,
sort of desk. And so the whole crew, the cast and crew, signed it, and I'm staring at it. It's on my bookshelf. You know, you can see in the video game, they're sitting around this kind of gnarled tree table. I said to my production designer, we have to get that table, like at least for the scene that is totally ripped from the game. That's what it's all about. Let's make it kind of feel like we even looked at the color tones. Let's get a little bit of purple in there. Let's get this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, it was a dream come true otherwise, because it wasn't a $35 million movie. It was like Blumhouse size, you know. Yeah. OG Blumhouse was, you know, $6-7 million. Like, we just go make this thing. It's just technically an independent film, you know. And it turned out kind of wild. I think that's why it performed so well, is they trusted a filmmaker to do their thing. And the editor of Mandy actually did Werewolves, Brett Bachman.
Wow.
He's just total genius. Yeah,
we're big fans of Mandy. That's a great movie.
Yeah, it's killer. Yeah, Brett is just phenomenal. He also did like Pig and The Vigil and Toxic Avenger, which is coming out, and he's going to do Fall of the House of Usher. It's just crazy.
Wow.
He's a secret weapon.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So one more thing on Werewolves Within, because we are huge fans of him. Sam Richardson is in Werewolves Within.
Yes.
And we are, I mean, I feel like everybody that really likes anything or has, you know, a sense of humor loves I Think You Should Leave. And maybe lesser known is Detroiters, which is a show that he was on as well. What was it like working with Sam Richardson? We find him exceedingly funny and hilarious and love to watch him. So what was it like working with him? Is he like funny on set? Like, is he basically the same in real life as he is when you see him record?
Such a sweetheart on screen.
Such a sweetheart in real life. So funny in real life. He wants to do good as the lead of a movie would. He hadn't led many films, so he brought his A game, just as he'd done with all of his work previously. But this was a big deal for him. And it was really important to me to give an actor like Sam the opportunity to play the hero. We were all super excited for that, Sam included. He was super grateful about it. He's like, yeah, you know, I don't usually get the opportunity to get to play this role, so let's do something fun with it. I mean, you see, he was amazing, collaborative, like such a great leader, just like Finn Wheeler is, you know. And then off camera, he's just cackling and laughing with everybody. Like, just to watch him and like Harvey Guillen in the kitchen, like having snacks at the set, you know, alone. Like, oh my God, these are two like comedy legends in the making right here.
For sure.
It was amazing. The magic thing about Sam is that he has Tom Hanks like endearing quality to him, but then he's got the comedic delivery that is so trailblazingly whip fast, whip sharp, razor sharp, I should say, and whip fast, that you don't know what hits you. Like, he'll just say something under his breath. That's the funniest thing ever. So couldn't ask for a better leader of film, and I'm dying to work with him again.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we have about 10 minutes left, so we have to talk about it. We've got to talk about Darkman. I mean, what a film, man. What a film. And I was born in 1995. I don't want to date myself. Mm-hmm. This film came out in what, the 1990?
1990. Yeah, that's correct.
I had never heard of this film until I think I saw your name attached to it on Twitter somehow. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about how your name became associated with Darkman?
I started tweeting the shit out of it. I just suddenly remembered that when I was a kid, I used to watch this movie again and again and again. And wore the VHS into the ground, or I guess my parents had let me rent it again and again and again, because they were like, oh, it looks like a superhero film. I mean, it's scary Batman. Like, it's like scary, funny Batman. At least it was to me as a kid. And then you look at it now and you're just like, this is just, I rented it again after many, many, many years. I went ahead and bought it. And I was like, holy shit, this is a rewatchable movie. You could watch this a few times a month and not get sick of it, because it's he is totally, Raimi is a master of his craft at that point. He's made a comic book movie, and it is not a rocket science endeavor. It's just a fun thing. You put it on in the background, you can sit down on the edge of your seat, you can enjoy the performances, the camera work. There's so much to enjoy. I started tweeting the shit out about how I wanted to make a legacy sequel. I wanted to play in that world. And then I said to my reps, I said, you have to find out, who has the IP. Well, Sam Raimi, you got to get his blessing, but Universal has it. And so I have had some meetings. I have done some pitches. I have talked to Sam Raimi about Darkman. There's no further movement right now, but my guess is that if I have my Barbarian moment, that there might be. So I'm hoping that my technique or my plan in my life, in the filmography of my life, because Darkman, or to play in that world, is my white whale, is that the next movie I do feels like a sort of a horror adventure movie with some action, so that you can really kind of see, okay, now when we got to see him do this black box theater thing, and we got to see him do the kind of creepy Beerfield Inn kind of Clue thing, Tremors thing. And I want the next thing to be oh shit, this guy he can handle, so he can handle punches and kicks and gunshots. He can go for the horror, but it's so funny. So if I can do that as kind of a continued sort of real piece to work my way towards, my Bruckner Hellraiser moment with Darkman, although I wouldn't want to remake Darkman. I think Darkman warrants a legacy sequel, because if you do look up Liam Neeson Darkman, he very recently said I'd still be down. You don't need to hang him from a building, but I think there's a story there that folks who haven't discovered the original movie, I think they'd be interested, and I think there's something there. I think there's a way in. So we'll see how that nets out. But my guess is that the reason why they haven't dusted off the IP for some time is it just sort of, it came and went. It made money back then, but it is an obscure film. And, there's probably a feeling that it would need to be remade. But dude, look at what original movies are being made right now. What's to say that a horror hero movie getting made wouldn't kill?
Right. And Halloween just got a whole trilogy based off of just the canon of the first film, right?
Fuck so yeah, that's right.
Why can't we? Why can't we just make a sequel to Darkman that's not the two or three that already happened?
That's right. I mean, I wish Darkman was as indelible a cultural milestone as Halloween, and that's probably a piece of it. But you look at the comic book spinoffs and Raimi just as a person, just with his name and his stamp on and everything else. I have a good feeling about it. I don't know. I think I also, because I've tweeted about it so much and talked so much, that I've stunk up the IP, that people think well, I can't touch that. That's Josh Ruben's, and I'm like, oh, sorry. So we'll see how it nets out, if I can follow through and actually make the fucking thing.
It's such a quotable movie. Josh and I were talking earlier. Just so many lines. I can't imagine you watching it as a kid. It must have been such a different experience watching it as an adult, because I'm watching it as an adult and I'm like, holy shit, this is such a quotable movie. It's such a funny movie. And even parts where I'm not sure if they're trying to be funny, but it just comes off as funny. The main opening scene, as soon as he pulls the leg off and he starts shooting, all of a sudden these cars bust out of cardboard or wooden boxes out of nowhere. There's guys in them already. Just fucking chaos, man.
Chaos, full on Raimi action chaos, and that is just a fucking dream.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what,
slaps.
if anyone can do it, it's you. So
I mean, bless you. I think so too. I'm gonna say yes, that's right. I sure will.
Awesome.
There you go.
So we're pretty much out of time. I know we're gonna do two or three more just rapid fire questions, if that's okay with you, and we can do real quick answers, and then we'll wrap up. First of all, I think we probably know the answer to this, but is horror your favorite genre?
I'd have to say horror is my favorite genre. I was a horror lover before I was a comedy lover.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you spent a lot of your time in comedy with College Humor, like you said, right?
Years. Yeah, but if you do look closely at the shit that did well in that trajectory, or the stuff that I was clearly helming, it was pretty dark. It was darker leaning, darker comedy. Even Freddie Darrell has a wink of it. Always been a genre fan first.
Excellent. What is your favorite subgenre in horror?
Ooh.
Oh man, I'm an aquatic horror freak. Even bad ones. There are ones I'm even hearing about. There was one that was announced years ago. I can't stop thinking about. I bought The Shallows. You know what I mean? I like a bad shark movie. I like a good shark movie. But anything in water, I loved Crawl. I'm a big aquatic horror person.
What What about like what's that movie with Kristen Stewart that she did where she was underwater?
Underwater, I love.
It's called Underwater. There you go.
Yes, I mean, I thought that was just fucking rad. Looks beautiful, scary, like, you know, the fact it's Cthulhu adjacent, Lovecrafty. I mean, fucking rad.
Yeah, Underwater was like a space horror movie, but underwater.
Yeah.
Fucking awesome.
It's great. It was great. Underrated.
All right. Well, last question, or Brett, I'll let you ask the last question. You can pick the last one since I just went. Go for it, and then we're gonna.
Which one? There's like 3 questions here you didn't ask.
Ask all 3. You can.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. So we already talked about him playing video games, so I don't want to ask about him playing video games. We already asked him, you know.
That's what I was saying. There's only one question left.
Oh. How does being an actor help you when you're, you know, directing and vice versa?
You can speak an actor's language. You're not just coming in fully with the technical shit, although I do that too. But you can, there is just an actor speak, you know, just enough when to leave them alone to let them do their thing. It's coming in with more of a jazz musician's kind of perspective than like a professor's perspective, if that makes sense. It's like, I'm not gonna kind of guide you and instruct you. I'm gonna play with you. Let's find it together. You got to come in holistically. I think that's the best kind of way of articulating it.
Yeah, that's a great
beautiful
answer.
Yeah.
All right, well, listen, Mr. Josh Ruben, we really appreciate you coming on the show. Where can people find you? Where do you want them to follow you or get involved? How is the best way to follow you, what you're doing, and how to keep up to date with that?
Sure, I'm pretty much on all the socials, just at Josh Ruben, Ruben. But I have a website, joshsmindhouse.com. That's got pictures and merch and news and all that stuff too, if you want to get a little more in depth. But that's it. That's all she wrote.
Excellent.
All right.
One more round of applause for Josh Ruben.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say, make sure you watch Blood Relatives and A Wounded Fawn, both of them on Shudder. So
that's right. Get a Shudder subscription. Those guys are going through some crazy tumult. Get Shudder, do the free trial, do the real thing. It's a few bucks a month. It's totally worth it. The curation is out of control.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, Josh, thank you so much, man.
Thank you both so much. Great interview. Great talking to you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Haptic Intel. Did you do it? Subscribe right now.